Hi everyone and welcome to the Desteni I Process live Google Hangout. We do Hangouts here on the Desteni I Process every Thursday, and at the moment we are walking a series on family dynamics, transforming family dynamics, and how you can utilize the Desteni tools and the Desteni I Process courses to assist and support yourself in transforming, for example, your family conflicts or your experiences of conflict towards your family within yourself. As always, you're able to participate in the discussion by posting your comment or your question on our Google Plus event page. If you're watching this live on YouTube, you have to click on where it says be part of the conversation. That will take you to our Google Plus page, and then you can type in your question or your comment, and we will bring it up here on the live broadcast. If you're watching the Hangout while it's recorded, meaning afterwards, you can place your question or your comment in the YouTube comment section, and we'll then give it direction there. So in this Hangout, we're talking about sibling relationships and some of the patterns or dynamics that are present in our relationship with our siblings that makes them difficult and complicated and conflictual. For example, sibling rivalry. And something that we discovered as we were researching for this topic is that it's, for many people, their relationship with their siblings is actually very difficult, and it's not necessarily an easy relationship to transform or to make effective and harmonious. So we're also going to be discussing a little bit about why that is and how you can support yourself. And to do that, we have invited two ladies with us today who has a lot of experience with siblings, because between them they have, let me see if I can count, 10 siblings, I think, because there are 6 in Garb's family. Hi, Garb.
Hey, Anna.
So you're from the US, and you are, in your family, you are 6 sisters, is that correct?
Yep.
So
five sisters, so 6 girls total.
Right. And Andrea, hi Andrea. Can you hear us? Okay, but it looks like Andrea's internet connection might have frozen there for a moment. But in Andrea's family, they are 4 sisters. So that's why I said between you, you are 10 siblings, which is quite a lot.
Yeah.
So, Garb, we'll see if Andrea's able to get back on. But in the meantime, can you share a little bit about also to give the viewers a point of reference and see how they can relate to their own life? How was your relationship with your siblings growing up?
Okay, so growing up, my relationship with my sisters was, well, I'm the youngest, the second youngest out of the 6. So I had 4 older sisters and 1 younger sister. So from my perspective, I had a very interesting way of seeing the world through my sisters. So I had very different types of sisters. Like my oldest sister is more peaceful. My second to oldest is more, she's more, I would say, a bit more stubborn in a way, but she just had a different view of life that I didn't necessarily agree with. And then the sister under her, she was very athletic, and me and her got along well because we were very competitive with each other. I was very athletic as well. I like to do a lot of sports, and so did she. And then the one under her, she was very independent, very driven within her own goals. Very social. She was very well networked and things. So it was interesting to see her and how she did things and learn from her. And then Sue, my younger sister, was like, me and her always grew up as like buddies. We were always friends. So I kind of saw her as someone I had to protect and take care of because she was younger than me. So
it's all being 6 siblings, you get to see all the various sort of personalities that tend to emerge in a pack of siblings, you know, because we were talking about before that we started the Hangout that there is this, I don't know if you know anything about this, Andrea, you studied psychology, but there's this psychological theory that you have, like, the youngest sibling has a specific personality, and then the middle one, and then the oldest one. And then since you're 6, it's like you're seeing all these you could say, archetypes or these characters.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was interesting to just grow up with a bunch of different people. And, you know, in the family dynamic, it was very competitive, but also we were very close and we got along pretty well growing up. I mean, there's always fights going on and always like conflict, but overall we were like a close-knit family, and we kind of looked out for each other and supported each other. So there was a lot going on within it for sure.
And Andrea, you are the youngest of 4 sisters. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear and see me now again?
Yeah.
Anna?
Yeah, I can hear and see you now.
Can you see me? Okay. Okay, good. I'm back. Yes. Yeah, I was the youngest. I was the youngest of 4 sisters, which similar to what Garb went through. You know, my experience, because there was such a big gap between myself and the next sister. They were the 3 university students, and they were like going out partying, and they were having friends visit them in their rooms. And I was the little young one that just wanted to look up to my sisters and, you know, learn from them and hang out with them. And, you know, their friends were so cool, and they were also artsy. And this in itself, you know, which we'll get to, you know, just now in our discussion, as you guys mentioned, each one having its specific personality, and combine that with the age gap, and combine that with a father who had severe depression, and the influence that that had on his relationship to my mother, and how that affected his relationship to us, especially where as a young child I was observing my sisters having a lot of conflict situations with my father. So all of those things, various dynamics that one can then see playing out from all of these relationships.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see that we often tend to think that, you know, that this is me, this is who I am. And then when you discuss with other people, you realize that there are actually these personalities that are common in all families, which, you know, begs the question, then is it really just me and who I am? And if it's common in more families, then why is it that way? But what patterns have you seen, like these, for example, sibling rivalry? Is that something that you've experienced a lot in your family, Garb?
Yeah, sibling rivalry. Yeah, there was, mostly it was based on like me in my own mind creating like you know, ideals through my sisters of who I wanted to be by, you know, observing them and seeing, you know, how they maybe like, because they're all older than me, so they always had, like, I always looked up to them to see, you know, what was the style, what was the music, you know, what did they like, because if that was, you know, they're so cool, so if they like that, then that will make me cool. And so just using that as a point of, you know, comparison, and then through that comparison also creating judgments about myself. You know, if I'm not looking this way, for instance, then, you know, I'm not going to be cool. And creating all those judgments created, you know, that point of competition and comparison with my sisters, which later on created you know, that basis for going out into like school and the world, and, you know, continuing those comparisons and judgments about myself and other people. And, you know, through growing up in that way, it kind of created, like I said, that basis to go out into the world and, you know, continue that relationship with people. Which,
oh, you mean with other people besides your siblings?
Yeah, like the sibling kind of formed that, you know, foundation to go out in the world and continue to judge myself and continue to compare and try to be, you know, the specific look or be, you know, cool or whatever the way I wanted to be, to, you know, be accepted by other people, for instance, or, you know, get what I want through appeasing what other people like in groups and things. So it just created that point of continued self-judgment and trying to be accepted by other people, which obviously doesn't create a, you know, a standing within myself to be able to just be myself.
It's interesting to consider how much who we become as adults is actually affected by our relationship with our siblings or with our parents in ways that we don't consider. You know, I have an older sister, but she's 18 years older than me. So I didn't grow up with her. You know, to me, she was always an adult. And so I've seen these lonely child or only child sort of dynamics that is also talked about in these psychological theories, where the only child tends to become like very self-centered and you know, don't care about others, or you know, it's very like this isolated little bubble, which I can relate to. But then I've also seen how when I was in relationships, for example, or had friends who had grown up with siblings, how there is, you know, how there is this point with sharing, and when you get something from your parents, it has to be an exact equal amount between the siblings, or there will be a conflict. Like such points I never experienced growing up. So I realized that in certain situations that for me it's more natural to share, whereas for my friend or the person I was in the relationship with, they would have this, you know, they would have brought this you could almost say this paranoia with them from growing up with their siblings. So that was the thing that I didn't get. You know, I didn't develop that competition in, you know, I have to get more than you or you have to get more than me, because there was only me. So I never experienced that anyone was taking something from me, which was interesting. And then another thing in that, I completely lost my train of thought. I'll come back to it if I remember. But is that something you guys can also relate to? Can you relate to that, Andrea?
Yes, you know, in relation to what I mentioned before about the different family dynamics, you know, specifically how I then grew up from that was that let's look at the dynamics between me and my sisters. Because they were the older ones and they knew more, I was always seen as the young one, the one that didn't know much, the one that needed to be taken care of. They had the answers. And what happened then is when we grew up, this continued, where I was seen as, oh, shame, you know, she makes weird decisions, or she's the young one making her little decisions. And I actually reached a point where, which we'll discuss a little bit further on, but a point where I had to stand up within that, because that just became a trend. You know, and another thing that also play out in our family dynamics is where, because of this different personality designs that would play out the whole time, there was quite a bit of friction. And this friction was partly to do with the fact that, as I mentioned before, there was this strained relationship between us and my father because of his depression. This in itself, because obviously children observe and they see wrong, and that a child takes that on in who they become if they have a strained relationship with a parent. So not only was there strained relationships between us and my father, but then in how the sisters were with each other, we were expressing towards each other the guilt, the anguish, the confusion, the irritation in relation to all these dynamics playing out. So each one, as they developed personality, we developed our personality such as the angry one, the feisty one, taking things personally, all because we became quite sensitive, and you could say there were the suppressed points in relation to the dynamics between us and our father, and that would come out. So we would be at family events, and one would say this, and then the other one would say that, and then this one would say that. So the dynamics were constantly fueling the hidden, suppressed stuff that nobody actually wants to talk about. So, you know, I can totally relate to that in relation to observing how the personalities come in, how the dynamics play out, and then you end up with explosive situations that, you know, kind of become the trend family. Oh, it's just how we are. Or,
Yeah.
oh, you know how she is, or how that one is.
Yeah.
That's unfortunately what plays out.
Or this is who I am, I can't change that. And then you don't realize that the exact same thing is playing out in someone else's family. So, Andrea, why is that? Why is it that it's actually not, you know, isolated to your family? Why is it that we see the same patterns, the same personalities go through in all our families, basically?
Yeah, you know, I often have interesting discussions with people about family because what tends to happen is we tend to believe that we should be together as family. So what you do is you have this automatic belief that I must be with my family, I must spend time with them. Now, my personality might be this, and abilities of this, but now we believe we must all get together and do things together, and then we end up in conflict. And instead of questioning why do I do this to myself or what can I do to change myself so that I'm not playing my role in the dynamic that's been playing out, instead we just have this automatic belief coming up, but family is family, we're blood, we must be together. And often I have this conversation with people where I say to them, well, okay, let's put it like this. If you were to walk up to strangers on the street and got into heated discussions and debates with these strangers and ended up yelling at each other and calling each other names, would you participate in that over and over and over? No, you probably wouldn't. So why would you do that with family? So it's definitely an automated belief system that exists in all of us, that things like words to look out for is things like, but we're blood, but we can support each other, or we're that. Now, that in itself I find, because we're really no different than all the other people on the planet. And we have our dynamics, as you know, communicating with any person out there, you have your frictions, you have your personality designs coming up. But in the family dynamic, we tend to believe that we have to be there, and so we keep playing things out. And it's interesting, if you consider changing the dynamic by changing yourself or walking away if necessary, there's a great fear that comes up with people, like automatic fear that comes up with, I can't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Garb, did you want to share anything in relation to this point?
Sure. And what Andrea said about how family is like breaking away from the family dynamic and kind of changing yourself, and in that changing, you kind of have to stand on your own for a little bit, because that's kind of what happened with my family. And when I started participating in Destiny, and you know, especially when I shaved my head, they kind of you know, changed their relationship with me, and through that a lot of fears came up within me of, you know, I have to stand on my own now. I mean, I can't, you know, rely on them anymore. So through that I really saw who I was within my family dynamic. I kind of like showed me who I've been and who I created myself to be with my family. So in a way it was a cool point to realize those points about myself, and you know, start to open those points up within writing, and you know, start to form the, you know, change that needed to take place so I can stand on my own and transform myself and not be dependent on my family, not to be dependent on my parents, for instance.
That's actually very interesting. Right when you said that, it occurred to me that that is what makes it so difficult, you know, that we have this idea of ourselves and who we are, and then that develops, you know, always in the dynamics with our families first and foremost, because they're the people that are the closest to us. So we have whatever family constellation we have, you know, we have the parents and the siblings, and then however their minds are, you know, we will develop accordingly. But then that kind of becomes an isolated system where you don't even see that it could be any different, that you could be any different, that the relationship could be any different. So it makes sense that to actually be able to step out of that and have a look at it and say, see, you know, is this who I'm going to be? Is this the best I can be? Is this the most supportive I can be to myself? You have to sort of make that break, not necessarily make a break with them, but be able to just step out of it for a moment. That's why writing is so cool, and it's so supportive, because through writing you can actually do that, you know, take that step and look at the family dynamics and see it for what it is, that it is dynamics. Whereas before or until you do that, it will seem like you were saying, Andrea, this is just the way it is, this is who we are, we can't be any different. And then I was also looking at why it is the same in all families. And that's of course because at the end of the day, all our minds are the same. And what's also so interesting to see is that if a new sibling comes into the family, the roles can shift. So the one that was before the cute little one suddenly becomes the older one, you know, and changes the way that they act around others, which goes to show that even these roles and these personalities are not even fixed, that we can at any point actually change and take on a different role depending on the dynamic with the other people, which also goes to show that it's not actually necessarily who we really are or an expression of ourselves genuinely. So if we start talking a little bit about how you then started changing your relationship with your family, you were saying, Garb, that you realized that you had to sort of make a break in a way and stand on your own. So how did you utilize the Destiny tools, and how did the Desteni I process assist you to start doing this for yourself?
Right. So Destiny supported me with just the principles within the Destiny message. Supported me with, you know, just being stable in that time where I kind of was for a time on my own. I had to stand in the face of, you know, my family going through their processes of realizing that I'm not going to be the same person that I was growing up. I've changed in ways. I've formed my own opinions or my own stand on things, and it's not the way, you know, the family is, especially within religion, because they were religious. So, you know, realizing that I'm not going to be going to church, I'm not going to be, you know, doing the whole Catholic thing. That especially impacted my parents. And so through the writing, through understanding that this is okay. I mean, this is part of being a human being in this world. You can form your own opinions, you can stand on your own, and you can make your own way by, you know, pushing yourself in like different areas like work, for instance, or you know, going out and making enough money so you can live on your own. You don't have to stay in the family house and be around the family so much, so you can kind of break off within, you know, making your own life for yourself. And that's what I kind of started doing. Although I did realize that I did need them in, you know, certain aspects. You know, they did support me in, you know, work. I worked for my dad, so he supported me with a job. And he always supported me in his own way. Like, he never was, well, I don't know if he was never, he supported me in the way he wanted to and he could. He didn't agree with what I did, but he never really created conflict with me. That was more my mom. And, you know, through what me and my mom have gone through now, she realizes that I'm my own being now. I'm my own person. I'm basically standing in the principles I've started with the Desteni process, and our relationship now is stable because she realizes, you know, I have changed. I'm not like this crazy person, and you know, I'm able to function in my own way and the way I wanted to live my life. So I kind of lost my train of thought, but overall, the Desteni process has supported in keeping me stable, the writing, the changing myself, the seeing myself in my environment and becoming more aware of who I am. And it's a good thing. It's a good process to walk.
Very cool. And I just got a notification that unfortunately our Q&A is turned off. If you are so lucky to have me connected on Skype, you're welcome to ask a question through Skype. Otherwise, of course, you can place your question or your comment in the YouTube section of this Hangout, which you're very welcome to do. But through Skype, we got a question from Christina. And she's asking, cool discussion so far, ladies. I would ask, what would you say to someone who says that sibling rivalry is innocent and not such a big deal? Because that was the initial point I saw when first investigating this point of my relationship with my brother. We had our highs and our lows like any normal family. So what would be the point to investigate, for one to investigate their relationship with their siblings? What's the value in essentially? Oh, I didn't get the last part of your question, Christina. But Andrea, what would you say to someone that says, well, that's normal, that's sibling relationships, that's just how it is?
Yeah, you know, what I find happens is that when we've decided, oh, okay, families must be together and that's what we do, what then happens is it kind of becomes like a cesspool for expressing each other's mind stuff. If you notice, that's where we get to, you know, take our frustrations out, we get to gossip, we get to moan, we get to argue, and it's the accepted fight ring, if you want to call it that. I'm not saying in all situations, don't get me wrong, you know, some families, you know, have enjoyable time, but we're talking now specifically in relation to, oh, it's all harmless, you know, to have sibling rivalry and competition, all of this, but this is the cage fighting area. And what I don't see as practical is that it doesn't get resolved. It's only the playpen where little children get to act out things and nothing gets resolved. And, you know, especially from my own experience, when I opened up discussions a while back with my own sisters in relation to the suppressed things that were coming through from what we were dealing with in relation to my father, it was quite a story to just even talk about it, because even in the mind, what was happening was that everybody kind of went, oh no, if we actually talk about things, then we're going to enter another dimension, which is hurting each other's feelings and reacting, and each one has to face our reactions. Oh no, we don't want to have to do that because we're supposed to be all kind and friendly and nice. But those things existed, which is why the conversation got to that point, because we eventually went, listen, something is off about the way that the subtle ways that we're communicating with each other, there's something off. And finally, when we opened up the points, a lot of it could be taken through to clarity, where we could actually talk about, this was my experience there. That happened when father died, and I went into that, and you went into that, and therefore we then communicated like this. But unfortunately, what happened was that, you know, in some situations, it wasn't all resolved because each person didn't work with their own experiences or didn't know how to work with them. So each person's experience stayed within them, and the family dynamics just continued on the way it is. So, which brings me back to the example of, it's fine if it's a support base, because isn't that what family's supposed to be? It's supposed to be the one place where we can all be together, support each other, and so forth. So if that's not what it's providing, then what is the point of coming together as a family? So I, for myself, had to decide, what is it that I wanted from family? I wanted to be able to have a quality relationship with these people, just like I want with every person in the world, where I can communicate clearly, effectively. Our relationship is supportive, meaning we can talk about what problems there are, and we can go into self-introspection and work out what is happening. So from my perspective, in my own family, you know, as Garb said, with the tool of writing and all of that, when I worked with, in the beginning of starting the Desteni process, I worked with who I had become, and that's the one process that I walked was who I was in relation to my family. And a lot of things that I saw there was, as I've explained, you know, as we've all walked the point of who I've become as a reaction and as a personality in relation to family dynamics. And when I started writing that out and seeing for myself, as Garb mentioned, where I had to stand up, where I had to stand, first of all, as their equals, because I was seen as the little young one. So I then took it upon myself to change, because I wanted that quality relationship with them. So when I'm with them and I'm communicating with them, I know who I am. I'm a stable individual here. I'm not communicating from the old dynamics, my old personalities. Now, in some situations, it's changed things, and some not, which we can expand on just now again. But so my answer to those kind of questions would be, you can decide if you want your family dynamic or environment to be supportive, or do you want it to just be a place where things are allowed to be express that are not supportive to who you are, because then you have to ask yourself a question: why do you think it is okay for you to be in a space where you have jealousy, comparison, anger, lashing out, all those things? Why is that an acceptable form of your own beingness?
Yeah, because then it also becomes in you. It's kind of like that, because we're family. It's being used as an excuse to let those sides of yourself come out. Well, it's just my family, they can't leave me, so why not, and then they can let it out as well, and then you have this like very inflamed. And I know that it's Thanksgiving in the US now, and you always see these like jokes about Thanksgiving and how horrible it is for people to come together with their family. And as you say, Andrea, why do we take that for granted? It doesn't have to be that way. Yeah, and I can share like a little bit of a different situation, because what I did with my sister, I completely just I thought the solution was, okay, this is a problematic relationship, let me just get the hell out of here. And I just stopped going to any form of family functions, and I was like, hey, this is cool, now I don't have to deal with it. So I kind of just walked the other way of just immediately not wanting to have anything to do with it. And so what I did with the Desteni I process is that I actually started allowing myself to bring my sister back into my life and see that everything, all the conflict, and this was, I've talked about it in previous Hangouts, this was such a shock to me to realize that all of it was existing inside my own mind. Like, I went from that point of going, we have a conflictual relationship, and like you were saying, Andrea, how I define myself in relation to her, I completely, broke that whole, you could say, that whole dynamic up, and then I said, what is my relationship towards her? What are my reactions towards her? And I'm only going to look at that, because essentially I don't know how she relates to me. I don't know who I am within her mind. And I can't really do much about that, but what I can do about is who I am within myself. And so I realized that I have created all this conflict. And it was actually through walking what's called a mind construct, which is something that you do in the Desteni I Process Pro course, which is an amazing tool, especially when you're working with something like family dynamics or family relationships that's been going on for many, many years, where it feels so sticky and so complicated and so entangled, and you feel like you can't see the ins and the outs and how to possibly change it. And what was so fascinating and shocking when I started basically walking through my entire relationship with my sister, from the first moment I can remember up until when I then sort of broke off the relationship. And I realized that all the conflict was something that I created within my own mind because of how I had situated her and me. I wanted her to be more than what she was. Like, I wanted her to love me in a different way. I had created this idea, and that was it. And from this entire sticky, horrible, I never want to see her again, all these like very intense emotions, I realized that the whole thing was like, it came down to something very childish and very simple, and that I could in that moment let it go and embrace my sister. And that was really a shock, and that's really when I realized how amazing the Desteni I Process tools are. And then in my case, I then wanted to go and meet my sister, like, because now all this conflict was gone. I didn't experience it anymore. I didn't have any resistance towards her. And what I find interesting here is that, and you can do the same with your parents or with anyone, is that the other person suddenly becomes a real person. They're no longer this role that plays out inside your mind in relation to who you are. They can now be an actual real person that you can get to know, and you see them for what they are, without everything they do is something that you take personal and ask, but who am I in relation to that? I don't know, is that something you can relate to, Garb?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely see writing mind constructs as a huge support in understanding the relationships with family and sisters and parents. one aspect I was going to talk about was for instance, the gossip within within the relationship with your sisters, and how that can be something that, like, that's one point that I realized is like how gossipy we could be, and how, like, just automatic you kind of go into that, and, like, you know, you kind of build with the energy of the conversation. And through walking the Destiny tools, the writing and such, and realizing what I was doing, I started to stop doing that because I didn't want to participate in gossip, obviously. But then I realized through walking that point that I started to judge my family and my siblings for doing that. And, you know, I had to write, you know, more on that point of realizing, you know, I can share myself and, you know, stop participating, but I can't change other people. So they have to, you know, walk their own process, and I can share myself, like I said, but I can't force change. So I realized that point as well. And through my own writing and through supporting myself, I started to not only stop the gossiping, but also stop judging other people for doing that. So that was just one other point I thought of.
Did you want to add anything to that, Andrea?
Yeah, you know, I walk the same point of taking, using the tool of writing to really map out, and as you said, doing timelines, walking out the timelines of situation in the past that created a design of who I am with my family. And what I did was, this allowed me to see, by observing the past, oh, this person says this, I react like this, then I say that, then she reacts like that, then I do that. Keeping the cycles going all the time. And what the tool of writing and doing the mind construct really assisted me with, to obviously write self-forgiveness, to forgive myself for each design point, let it go, stop it inside myself, and then write out the self-correction, which I utilized next time when I was with family. I could be in a room with my family and simply be there, participate, but as soon as I noticed a shift where, well, okay, we're going into a point because so-and-so said something, or I said something, now she's reacting, now this book, then I would just stop. Because as Garb said, we're not now trying to change other people. We can, in conversations with our family, if something comes up, we can support each other, we can talk something out, but that's not something we now go out and say, I'm going to talk to you about X, Y, and Z. It's more a changing of self. And then you'll find that in family situations you might now not necessarily be comfortable, because even though you're changing yourself, there's still things happening which you're not changing yourself. Now you're sitting there, you're like, okay, I don't see myself participating. So bringing back to the point I made before, where this is a decision each one has to make of, okay, where do I participate, where do I not? But this allowed me definitely to just, for that moment, I mean, I'm not saying it happens all the time, but let's say in one family event that I participate in, there might be 2 or 3 old habits that start creeping up, and I don't play my part in the dynamic. I just stop, breathe, maybe go get a glass of water, look at the garden, because my way that I can support in those situations, in understanding that they're not applying the tools that I am, so they're not going to necessarily understand where I'm coming from if I was to all of a sudden make some big statement. So what I do instead to be supported in that context is I will give basic insights, or maybe some common sense perspectives that one could share, that I see would assist the person to move them through an anger or a reaction that they're having to somebody. I could say, have you considered that maybe what she said, she actually meant that? You know, subtle things like that. Or I would change the subject to allow everybody to move on, because I know that it is just a pattern that's playing out, it's not who we are. So it's been really, really cool. You know, and some relationships for me have changed that way, where now I can be more myself, meaning I don't have to stop and so often. Some relationships is taking a bit more of being aware of when things are moving and shifting. So it's an ongoing process all the time.
Yeah, definitely. And something that I also find interesting in relation to that is that we tend to be in the throw of emotions with our family. You know, it's like this storm, and you're thinking, why is this always happening? You know, how can I stop it? And there, right there, what you said is actually the recipe for change. It is really that simple. You identify the patterns, you identify the dynamics, you go in and take self-responsibility. And I'm not saying that it's easy or that it's going to change in one moment, but it is at least simplistic. It is something that you can start doing today. It's practical. And so it doesn't have to be this storm of emotions. But then also what we tend to do is that we focus so much on the other person. Why is she always like that? I wish she could just change. And then we'll kind of sit and wait and hope that she will change. And of course, you know, it doesn't happen like that. So taking on this point for oneself and saying, okay, but I'm going to stop at my part in where that cycle starts. You know, I'm not going to then go into that conversation. And then what actually happens, which is so amazing, is that by you doing that, it doesn't play out the same way anymore. You know, the other person then they don't have then you can say the fuel to then do the next part of the cycle that would have normally happened. And so it actually supports them as well without having this, you know, big conversation necessarily about it. And so that's what's so cool about this process, is that you can actually right here, right now, start changing your relationship with your family simply by identifying, you know, the patterns and then starting to change yourself. And then, as you said, Andrea, you know, even though they might not change, you can always stand up and take a walk or take a sip of water. You know, you don't have to participate. So Garb, we're about to end our hangout here for today. Do you have any other tips or any other suggestions for someone who would like to change and transform their relationship with their siblings?
Obviously, I suggest to, you know, if you're interested in what we're saying and see value in it, to start the Desteni process. They have a free course that goes over the basics of self-forgiveness and self-corrective writing, and you can start there and learn how to do that. And, you know, through just starting there, you'll start to, you know, be able to then walk the points in your living and, you know, start to change yourself to have better relationships with your family members, and, you know, and then into your world. So just start at the basics and support yourself to be able to stand and change. Only you can do that, so it's really up to each one who they want to be, and my suggestion is a DIP Lite course. Start there.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be, you know, sorting out the entire relationship all at once. You know, you can just start with the last conversation you had with them, and then you start from there, you know. Keep it simple for yourself. Andrea, before we finish, we got one final question here from Joanna, so I'd like us to finish off with answering that. And she's saying, "Hi, ladies. This is an amazing topic and a very supportive discussion. From my experience and through walking my process, I was able to stop blaming my two sisters for whatever personalities I've accepted in me. And now I'm actually grateful for having these two beings in my life that assist me to see new perspectives and even to face reactions within me that I can use as a reference. However, if it wasn't for the Desteni I process, I would have been likely to continue to accept a pattern of inferiority and self-abuse, and eventually also project these onto my own relationships with my partners. How would you assist people that still face a relationship of being bullied by older siblings, and how to deconstruct it so it doesn't become a reference for personal relationships?" Did you get that?
Yes, I did. And thank you. So what I would suggest is to actually join us on our forum, where you can come and write, and we have daily moderators assisting, because what I would suggest there is to address the construct of bullying, meaning what is it showing to you about yourself, and then what is it showing you about your family dynamic that's busy playing out. Because those would be the 2 points that I would suggest taking into consideration, because if you are identifying, okay, what is placing the focus on myself. What is it about myself that is playing into this design of bullying? Is it that I go into inferiority? Is it because I inherently see myself as less than, or such as in my case, the younger one, the inexperienced one, the one that doesn't know everything? And once you've written that out and you can apply the changes so that you get to a point of stability within yourself, then you can start looking at, okay, well, which is what we've been discussing. Who am I in relation to the family dynamic? We've now looked at that. But now who am I in relation specifically to the bully? Because the bully might be a person who is dealing with their own anger. They're dealing with their own jealousy, so forth and so forth. So why is it that this person, are they bullying in general, or are they only bullying me? So what is it about them that I can understand? What is it about them that, within my understanding of what this person is going through, I can, in that research, I can take responsibility also for those points within myself? Because if I'm taking responsibility, let's say, for the anger that is behind the bullying, then what happens is that one is less likely to react to the bully, because I'm not saying the bully is going to, if they hit you with a knife, the knife is going to pass through you. I'm saying that if you understand the design of the being, what will happen is that when the bully comes, you've now sorted your stuff, plus you understanding by standing equal to the information of the bully. Now the bully is communicating with you and you're actually seeing what the person is saying. Then you can start possibly presenting insights, such as, which actually happened, interesting question, happened in my one dynamic points. There was such a aggression point that came up. I'll use it as a general example. And in that moment, I was really, almost you could say, being tested on all the writing I'd done for myself of self-respect, standing up, being the person's equal. Because in that moment, the storm came and I had to stand. And I had to understand, without judgment, as Garb said, removing the layers of judgment, where this person is coming through, so that even if the bullying is happening to an extent, one can stop it by saying to the person, stop, no more, and so forth. But you can also then actually perhaps assist the person by giving insights that might diffuse the bullying, for example.
Very cool perspective. Garb and Andrea, we have run out of time, but I would definitely suggest that this is something that you pick up on if you are facing this point for yourself. It would be really cool to write a blog on it, and also to check out our websites, like Andrea said, are the Desteni I Process courses and the Desteni forum, where you can actually post if you have any more questions about sibling relationships. We'll put all the links in the description of the YouTube video here once it's uploaded, after we're done with the live broadcast. Garb and Andrea, thank you so much for being here. This was a really cool point to walk, and it's like, it was almost just like a little taster, like, because we could talk about this topic for a long time, and there are many more dimensions. But this gives you an overview, and also like an incentive to get started walking this process for yourself and seeing that it is possible to change these very complicated relationships. Thank you so much for being here, and we will be back next week. Bye.